and think that this franchise, because of Baker Mayfield, that they need an offensive coach. I think that that's what the media attention, that's what the fans, but is that really the best coach for the Browns? To me, I don't think you need an offensive coach to get the best out of Baker Mayfield. I believe you can get a great offensive coordinator. I would go for the best coach because they got some good defensive personnel too that's just as valuable and has to be developed just like the offensive talent. Let's look in that division. Look at the coaches. Cincinnati, Marvin Lewis. What does he coach?
Defensive.
Oh, okay. Harbaugh. He's the specialty item, but he's a special teams coach. And Mike Tomlin, what's his specialty? Defense. So the defensive coaches have done well in that division. And it's a rough, rugged division. Weather plays a part. So I don't believe that you just fall into the trap that, oh, I got to hire an offensive mind just because Sean McVay. Sean McVay is 32. Have we ever seen Sean McVay before?
No.
Maybe Shanahan. Maybe the first Shanahan before Kyle, his dad.
Sure.
Remember, when he was that age, he was one of those bright, young minds and everything. But, man, Sean McVays just aren't out there running up and down the street. So I just think people are looking at this the wrong way, thinking that, oh, I got to get an offensive coach for Baker Mayfield. I believe in Bruce Arians' coaching ability, but I don't know if his style, and that's throwing the ball deep down the field in this new NFL, is the best thing for Baker Mayfield or a young quarterback trying to be successful in the league.
If they are going to go with an offensive coach, I'll tell you a guy, as far as getting the most out of that defense, I would look to his defensive coordinator, and that's a guy I think is going to be available here in a few weeks, and that's Todd Bowles. I think if you are whatever position you go with as far as the head coach, offensive-minded head coach or defensive-minded head coach, the coordinator on the opposite side of the ball becomes critical. Now, I don't know who the hot up-and-coming coordinators are. I know who the coordinators who could become head coaches are, but the guys who are about ready to become coordinators on the offensive side that the Browns could hire, those are names I'm not as familiar with. But what I know is this. The Browns, the most important decision they've made in the last decade was drafting Baker Mayfield. The next most important decision they're going to make is who's the next head coach. Because whomever they choose, they need, and Baker needs so desperately, for them to not be discussing a head coaching change again for the life of not only his rookie contract, but into his second contract. Because it is so hard to be successful in this league if you're going through different head coaches, different coordinators, different systems, no matter how talented the player is.
Owner Jimmy Haslam doesn't have
a track record, but he's never had a track record of having the quarterback. One of the things that gets coaches and GMs fired is not having the quarterback. I think now he has the quarterback. You got to find the right marriage with the head coach.
I think it becomes important, the relationship Dorsey has with whoever this head coach is. I believe if Mike McCarthy becomes available, because Dorsey has some experience with him, in this position, what I've learned is sometimes it's not who's best, it's who they are familiar with and who they're comfortable with. And I believe that Dorsey, that relationship becomes important, I believe, because he's the one selected Baker. He'll get the right coach for him, and he might not be an offensive coach.
All right, speaking of coaches, let's get back to the Cowboys. They dropped an ugly one to the Titans last night. The offense only scored 14. Quarterback Dak Prescott turned the ball over twice, and Dallas now finds themselves 2 games back in the division. So we're good? Well, sort of, according to Jerry Jones. Despite the 3-5 record, Jerry says he has no plans to fire Jason Garrett. CC, should Jerry be considering a coaching change?
No, absolutely not. It wouldn't help the team at all. They're not out of the playoff hunt at 3-5. They could flip it around and easily go 6-2, be at 9-7. They could get hot and be 7-1. So no, I wouldn't fire the coach. And there's no succession plan. How do you help your team? How do you help the offensive line that's underimproving by changing the head coach? How do you help a defense that couldn't get off the field on 3rd down by changing the head coach? All right, how do you help the quarterback? You think Dak Prescott gets better by you firing Jason Garrett? No, he doesn't. You know, so I would play out the string until the end of the season. At the end of the season, I believe that he's been there long enough, and with the lack of overall playoff success or playoff appearances, I believe that will, in its totality, be enough to be able to evaluate the quarterback. I mean, the quarterback and the head coach, and to be able to move on in either direction. Because I'm not stuck with the quarterback. All right, I ain't stuck with the quarterback. I haven't made up my mind like Jerry Jones has. Right. And I don't believe it would not help his growth by releasing the quarterback, Jason Garrett, for the last 8 games of the season.
Right. Listen, at this point, I think it's more likely than not that the Dallas Cowboys have a new head coach to start next season. But I also think it's very unlikely they fire their coach during the season because they don't have Norv Turner on the staff. They don't have Wade Phillips on the staff. They don't have a guy who has head coaching experience as a coordinator. They have Marinelli.
Yeah,
they have Rod Marinelli, who they could go to. They could go to Rod Marinelli in that spot, I suppose. But a guy who has had any success as a head coach in the NFL on the staff. Like, I don't think that it is likely they make a midseason change. Now, it should be noted that 8 years ago yesterday, Jerry Jones gave a vote of confidence to Wade Phillips that he's going to finish out the year, and 3 days later fired him. So it's not off the board, but I think the most important point you made, C, is about you're not married to Dak Prescott, but Jerry seems to be. And if he is married to the quarterback, he has to continue to find different reasons that the quarterback's not succeeding that isn't the fault of the quarterback. Like, we have seen it. Last year it was the Zeke suspension. This year it was not having a number one option, so they trade for Amari Cooper. It was the offensive line wasn't playing well enough, so they fire the offensive line coach. You are going to find a lot of different scapegoats before you get to the quarterback if the man in charge, the only person whose opinion actually matters, has decided we have our quarterback. If he's not succeeding, it's everyone's fault but his.
Well, how much of Dak's lack of success, if you will, or lack of growth is because of Jason Garrett? Is it Jason Garrett's job? Is he that tied into Dak Prescott that he's responsible for how well Dak Prescott plays or develops?
This is the problem here. Is when a player has success as a rookie, we automatically just put something on that. Oh, a guy comes into the NFL. Oh, this guy's going to be successful. That don't mean that. I mean, he had a successful season. There's a lot of players that had 1 season, 2 seasons, 3 seasons in the NFL. But there's not a whole lot that put together 5 to 10 seasons. That's the difference in this league, and you see in the players. That's when you see, oh, man, is this guy a good quarterback? Well, how long is he going to be able to do this? And that's the difference between the good and the great in this league. And just because you have success initially does not mean long-term success. And it does not mean, to me, Jason Garrett, his influence on Scott Linehan and them not growing the offensive system, that is his responsibility. Because when Jason Witten decides to retire, when they decide not to bring back Dez Bryant, what was their plan? What type of team were they going to be? What was their change-up pitch? Because we know we're going to hand it to Zeke 20 times. Are we going to develop Zeke as a pass catcher out of the backfield? Because Dallas is one of the few teams in the NFL that they do not have a specialist, a small guy who comes out of the backfield and be a mismatch against linebackers and safeties. They don't play that way. Why? Everyone else is doing it. Because it hadn't been developed. So that part, that is Scott Linehan's fault. That is Jason Garrett's fault. When they knew the team that they had and they did not develop these other things of how they're going to move the football, they have no sideline passing game. All these teams throwing bubble screens and working things off of that, they don't do that. Why? That is their responsibility. They did not develop that. So for me, they're responsible for it. And ultimately, that's the reason why Jason Garrett will lose his job as the Dallas Cowboys head coach.
And listen, though, Jason Garrett obviously does not have playoff success at a high level or really at any level on his resume. The thing he has on his resume is he took over the Cowboys in 2011. That was his first full season. Since then, only the Patriots and Steelers have 0 losing seasons. The Cowboys just have 1. There's only been 1 year under Jason Garrett they were under 500. That's the year Romo broke his collarbone early and missed the final 11 games of the year. They've never bottomed out. If 3-5 turns into 6-10, if they double up what they did in the first half and the second half, I don't see how he survives it. Like, he can finish the year probably because I don't expect him to change during the season. But the one thing Jerry Jones and Jason Garrett are able to hang their hat on is we've never been bad. We maybe been mediocre. We've maybe gotten more coverage than our record would deserve, but we've never bottomed out except for the 1 year we lost our quarterback and we had to throw Brandon Weeden out there. If they have a 5-6 win season this year with a healthy Zeke, with that defense, then it's hard to hold anyone accountable other than the coach and the quarterback.
It's a huge indictment. 2016. They're the best in the league, 13-3. I knew they'd come back to the pack. 2017, 10-6. They win 6 or 7 games with this young, talented crew that they have. Oh, someone's going to lose their job. Jerry has one that only way he can lose it is by dying. So someone else is going to lose their job besides the offensive line coach who got his pink slip last week.
It's a nice position to be in. The only way to lose your job is muerte. Coming up, was losing to the Saints exactly what the Rams needed? One of their players seems to think